Man, I thought I'd be done for today, but this fake news media is at it again. So, so I'm going through my news feed, seeing what's new in the world. Again, trying to stay on top of what's going on and also just be aware of what misinformation might be going out there. When I come across this article from the Washington Post. So, if you don't know who Dr. Scott Atlas is, he was a neuroradiologist from Stanford University Medical Center. And he recently, at the start of this month, or depending on when you're watching this, at the start of August, he joined the White House staff as part of the pandemic team. So, in the past, he has been a proponent for a form of herd immunity. But in this article, it's talking about it as if this is now an official policy being put out by the White House, or at the very least, being seriously considered and or talked about. I mean, that's what the headline says, unless if I read it wrong. You tell me. Now, the Washington Post has reportedly reached out to Dr. Atlas, and he has never responded. At worst, he may have made a claim in a press conference he did with Governor DeSantis of Florida earlier today, or within the past 20 hours, indicating that the Post never reached out to him when they claim they really did. Okay, that's the worst of it. But after the story broke, Dr. Atlas has said there has never been any serious talks in the White House, nor any change in strategy or plan from their current course, and in no way are they discussing moving towards herd immunity. Also, an official statement coming straight from White House Communications Director Alyssa Farah, who has confirmed that the White House has in no way changed their strategy towards, going towards herd immunity, but rather the president and his pandemic team are focused on therapeutic measures to try to treat the virus, as well as in the hopes of a future vaccine. So there's been no change in the White House, no change in strategy, there's no confirmation that they've been seriously discussing herd immunity. But you had to read into the article to find that. Like, you had to go deep into it. But again, look at the headline. White House is pushing for herd immunity, but no evidence of it. And there are a lot of people, both in the comments and in the article, that talks about why herd immunity would be problematic. So I also want to address some of those points while we're on the topic here in this video. So people in the comments in Twitter, as well as in the article itself, brings up Sweden, which I've been a big proponent of since the very beginning, way back in April. I like their strategy more so because, as someone who's more libertarian minded, all about personal liberties and less government tyranny, I wanted the people to be given all of the factual information, no fear mongering, no misinformation, no manipulation. Give them all of the data, inform them, and let them make up their own minds on what risk they're willing to take as it pertains to this virus, as well as trying to maintain some level of normalcy with their life. So I was always been a big proponent, and herd immunity makes sense. You need to get people exposed to a virus in order for them to build up an immunity. And if they have some underlying conditions that would otherwise make something like this fatal, then those individuals should take more extreme measures. That was always my thought. And it would appear as though it may be working. Take it for what it's worth, but the China-owned company organization known as the World Health Organization, WHO, did at one point praise Sweden for their approach, their strategy, as being the gold standard or the model that the world should take. but Sweden has been heavily hit from all over the world. I guess because they're going against the New World Order's approach of turning this planet into a police state, and giving those who are fighting against it reasons why they should not be giving up more of their power and rights and liberties to the government. So let's take a look at Sweden, shall we, to see whether or not if they did the right thing. So, according to what I've seen, as of today, Sweden has, and this is also according to Worldometer, a total death count of 5,807 people. So everyone says Sweden failed, has one of the highest death rates in the whole world, definitely higher than their Nordic neighbors. For starters, I really don't like the argument higher than their Nordic neighbors, Finland and Norway, because you can look at it, it's one of two strategies. Their neighbors did the strategy of, we're going to hide it out, destroy the economy, and then poke our heads to see if it's safe to come out again, only to eventually get a second wave, because when you've been sheltering in place for so long and not exposing yourself to a virus and or the elements that are out there, you're only going to make yourself more vulnerable. Your body isn't going to be able to resist or fight against any viral infection. And so you're just going to hide again later. And that's not a strategy. You can't shelter in place forever. And who knows if there ever will be a vaccine. I mean, this is a coronavirus after all, like the cold is also a coronavirus. Do we have a vaccine for that? And by the way, we do have a vaccine for the flu, and yet you still had 2 years ago as many reported deaths as 80,000 people died in the US alone of influenza. Viruses do mutate and change. So hiding in place is not a strategy, because you can't hide forever. Second, you either take your lumps now or take them all at once or take them later. Again, a lot of these countries that are doing this lockdown and stay at home until there's absolutely no deaths, no cases, is the equivalent of getting in trouble and knowing you're about to get spanked. And rather than taking your spanking right then and there, you prolong it. So we can take, Norway and Finland's approach, like that. They're going to get to the same death count at some point. They're just spreading it out and risking their economy in the meantime. But let's look at it. So in the country of 10,230,000 roughly, they reported about 5,821 deaths, with roughly over 73,000 and or 74,000 infected. I see a death rate of about 0.0788. Death per capita comes out to be 56.9. That's still actually lower than the per capita rate in New York, much lower than the per capita in New Jersey, but USA as a total, they are higher than the United States. The United States had a per capita, death per capita, which is death per 100,000, of about 48.4. New York and New Jersey really screwed us on that number. But let's take a look at the deaths if we were to break it down. So, of the deaths in Sweden, the high death rates that people are saying, well, their strategy failed. 96% of all of the deaths were people over the age of 60. Let's see here. So, people between the ages of 60 and 69, total deaths 400. People between the ages of 70 and 71, total deaths 1,253. Between the ages of 80 through 90, 2,409. Deaths of anyone over the age of 91 and over, 1,513. Again, so making up a total of 96%. People over the age of 70 made up over 89% of all of the deaths, and 82% of all of their deaths were in their nursing homes. So of that 5,807 deaths, 82% of them happened in nursing homes, which we all know people, if you go to a nursing home, you're on your last leg of life as it is. It's tragic. No one should ever go before what could have been a more so prolonged natural death, but still, they weren't spring chickens. They lived a long life. It's sad, and they had a failed nursing home policy that needs to be addressed, but it was mostly in the nursing home. But 96% of all the deaths were also, again, people over the age of 60. Those are the people who are at risk, the vulnerable that they need to protect, not the general population, because that means only 4% of the deaths were of people under the age of 60. And even smaller number than that, 1% of all of the deaths were people under the age of 50. If I even go even lower than that, you know what 1% equals out of 5,807? 72 deaths. If you can make policy to protect the people who are most vulnerable from this virus, protect the nursing homes, protect better the elderly, and make sure that those elderly people are taking the necessary precautions, because when you get older, your body starts to break down, your immune system cannot fight viruses the way that they used to. Take extra precautions. It was a success, just that there. Other than that, Sweden did not lock down at all. Businesses remained open, restaurants, bars, gyms, schools for anyone under the age of 16 was still mandatory, and they were still going. Other than that, it was all virtual. They did not make it mandatory for anyone to work from home in closing office buildings. They made the recommendation that if you could work from home, please do that. But if you couldn't, and so that was the strategy. And oh yes, by the way, no mask. Almost nobody in Sweden wears a mask. So there was no lockdown, no masks, no, shutting down of businesses, and you only saw a total of 72 people dying under the age of 50. And even in the US, when looking at some of the recent numbers that have come out, not that the numbers are accurate. And I'll do another video on the accuracy of testing. Death numbers is a whole other story. But CDC apparently just came out today and said only 6% of the deaths that they attributed to COVID-19 were of people who had no comorbidities. Only 6%. And again, that number I believe is highly inflated. So on the topic of herd immunity, can you really say it's a failure in and of itself? If healthy people, and Dr. Scott Atlas did a very informative interview, and I'll put the link to that with the Daily Caller about a month ago, July 10th, breaking down his argument for herd immunity then. This was before he even joined the White House. So again, there's no confirmation that this is something that he is strongly pushing now in his new role or has a strong voice. But he made an argument in an interview he did with the Daily Caller's Stephanie Hamill, where he says it makes sense to, with the absence of a vaccine that you never know would work to begin with, herd immunity is the way to go. It's always been the case when dealing with viral infections. That's how they do it with the flu as well. That's what the vaccine is. The flu vaccine is injecting you with an inactive or dead version of the virus, getting your body infected with a dead version of the virus so it can fight it off, so that when an active version of the virus hits your body, you should be able to have the white blood cells and or the cell count to fight it off. The antibodies to better fight it off the second time around. You're toughening yourself up. And for those who don't get the vaccine, like myself, I've never gotten a flu vaccine, at least not in my adult life. And I've never had the flu. And so for people like us, then that's when just regular exposure becomes the thing to do and allow your body to, once again, naturally fight it off. But again, as we saw in the case 2 years ago, 2018, it didn't matter if you had the flu vaccine or not. The vaccine that they were giving to people for the flu 2 years ago was in no way the same flu strain that was going around. So even if you get a vaccine, it could be pointless. So was herd immunity a failure? No, not for the general population. You don't need to quarantine the sick, the healthy. You don't need to quarantine people who are not at high risk, especially when the data is saying kids are not at high risk at all. The deaths for kids across the world is statistically zero. Transmission amongst children statistically is zero. It's spreading from them to another kid or from them to an adult. 29 other countries have reopened their schools, not including Sweden, which never closed to begin with. No major spike. We have reopened daycares. No major spike. Kids seem to be rather immune to this. Young adults as well. When I say immune, we get it, almost no symptoms. And when people who are under the age of 40 seem to have a very high rate of being asymptomatic. Most healthy young people who get it and never even know they had it. They were asymptomatic. And then for others who do get it, especially those a little bit older, in the 40s, 50s, at worst, mild symptoms that they get over. In fact, I believe Jordan Peterson's daughter did an interview about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks ago, where she indicated she came down with the virus. Bad timing, because she kind of did an article a week prior stating how ridiculous some of these lockdown measures and corona fear mongering has been, only to come to find out she tested positive for it, but then come to find out it felt like it was nothing more than a cold to her. Nothing serious. She's like, oh, I thought I had a cold. It really wasn't that serious. Most people have mild symptoms that they can just brush off at the very worst. So it makes sense to expose those people, allow them to build up some form of immunity, build up the antibodies to fight it, but protect the people who are at risk. And then the other concern that came up in at least in the Twitter comments from the Washington Post article was, well, millions are gonna die. These are the same people who said if Sweden did not lock down or take any drastic measures, they will see anywhere from 85,000 to 100,000 deaths. Well, Sweden did none of that. Did they see 85 to 100,000 deaths? No. Again, I say 5,807. So all of these models and all of this fear-mongering of potential deaths from the very beginning have been so off, and yet people still pushing this. So tell me what your thoughts are on it. Do you think herd immunity is a good strategy? What are your thoughts on Washington Post trying to push this narrative that this is the new strategy of the White House as well, without any corroborating evidence? So again, give me your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be more than glad to also respond to any of your thoughts and suggestions. And if you like what you heard, please hit the like button. And also, please, please, please subscribe. Really appreciate the love and support that's been coming so far. And let's just keep the truth out there. All right, viva la revolution.